I found a better backdrop than my spare bedroom. I've got.
There we go. We're live.
Lovely. Thank you. So, sorry, is it Facebook or YouTube you're transmitting on?
It's YouTube.
YouTube. Oh, okay. I got it right. Okay. Right. We'll just Mark will just keep letting people in, and we'll give people 5 minutes to settle down and come in. It's 7 o'clock now, so we'll give them 5 minutes and then we'll start. I was watching a replay of I presume it was Zoom yesterday, in fact, and there must have been a few people with their microphones on and not realised. And so, of course, you've got the speaker, and you've got the big picture of the speaker on the screen, and then somebody moves a chair, and it flips to them, and they go, "Oh," and then somebody else coughs, and it goes to them. So it is better with them all turned off.
The Zoom etiquette is as we've learned, quite important. We've learned how.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Well, we did try Teams the first time. It's called Teams Event, and it did work very, very well, but it was extremely complicated.
Yeah.
We gave that one up.
Yeah, I think for larger numbers, Zoom is the best one I've found.
It is good, yeah. And they've really improved it since I used it earlier on in the year. So yeah, it is very good. So we'll just wait a few more minutes, and then we'll kick off.
A few people on YouTube as well. That's nice. Hello on YouTube.
Good. Yeah. So hello to everyone coming in on YouTube.
I'm on Zoom.
Oh, hello, Dave.
Dave, yeah.
Hi.
I'll turn my mic off if you want me to.
And your camera as well, please.
And my camera?
Yeah. You just click it off. You can switch it back on again when the talk's finished.
I've switched the camera off, and I'm switching the volume off now.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, it looks like everyone's doing that. So thanks everybody for turning your cameras off and going on mute. We'll start in a few minutes. Okay, we'll start in a minute. should try doing my floating on the moon, shouldn't I? Oh, that looks silly. I'll not do that. No entertainment. No pre-meeting entertainment.
Should have asked.
You could have put your dicky bow on and give us a bit of jazz. Okay, we should start. Okay, so we'll start the meeting. So, hello everybody. Welcome everyone to this evening's online monthly meeting. I hope you're all keeping safe and well. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Steve Sutton, President of the Liverpool Astronomical Society. Welcome to our first online meeting of 2021. And we will be continuing to hold our monthly meetings online using this format of Zoom for some time yet to come, it seems. Welcome to any new pending members to this evening's meeting. Once we can get back into the Quaker meeting house in School Lane in Liverpool, and we can have our proper face-to-face meetings, then you can all be voted in by our membership. And we look forward to seeing you all there and everybody else too. But that, unfortunately, is still some time away from happening yet. Welcome to any visitors we have for this evening's talk, and also welcome to those of you who have joined via our YouTube channel. Can I ask you all, if you haven't done so, please, to mute your microphone, stop your video during the meeting, please. You can ask questions to our guest speaker using the chat button on Zoom or YouTube, and Alan will answer those questions at the end of his talk. You may also wish to minimize the view of all the other attendees. I don't know which format you're using, but there should be a button you can click somewhere that will minimize all the other screens of everybody else, of all the other attendees. You can go back to gallery mode later on afterwards. This meeting is being recorded, and if you wish to, you can view it again later on our YouTube channel. After the meeting, there will be a virtual pub for those of you that are on Zoom and want to meet up and chat afterwards with a drink. Unfortunately, you have to provide that yourself. So for those people that want to do that, just stay on Zoom after this meeting is closed, and we'll move straight into the virtual pub. Okay, moving on. For those of you that have been to a couple of these now will realise that we normally read the minutes out from the last meeting, but we're not going to do that online. So under normal conditions, we do that, but our council members have read the minutes from the last monthly meeting and approved them, and I will ratify them. And if any member wishes to see them, we can email you a copy. Moving on to announcements. Sorry, let me just put the little agenda up for those who need that. Oh. And there goes my WhatsApp. Sorry, I'll just turn that off so it doesn't interrupt us again. Okay, yeah, so moving on, there's the agenda. Sorry, I should have put that up before. Just a little bit of society business. Announcements, I've got just one announcement, and that is a request from the Campaign for the Protection of Rural England, CPRE, for their star count of 2021. And Phil will put a link up on our chat now, so that you've got an active link for later. And this is a star count for 2021, and you can become a citizen scientist for a few days between the 6th and the 14th of February. All your kids need to do is go outside, keeping safe and warm, and count the stars you can see in Orion. And the full details are in the link that Phil has put in the chat, and there's also a link on our Facebook group site if you want to go to there. So good luck with that, and I'll be doing it. Okay, so just a little bit more on the society. The society runs from September through to May, and for those of you that aren't aware, and I'm sorry if I'm repeating myself, it's free this year. There are no subs. However, if you wish to make a donation, then please contact myself, Mark Galvin, or Chris Banks, our treasurer. And thank you very much to those people who have donated. It's very much appreciated. And you can contact us on the website. There's a contact us section on the website. Swiftly moving on. And I can't remember all this, so I've got to write it down. Oh, you can't see it because it's got that funny backdrop, so it looks like I'm doing silly things. Right. Okay, so again, the QMH, where we normally hold our monthly meetings, remains closed. The Leighton Observatory at Pecks Hill remains closed. There's no outreach events planned. Let's hope we all get through this period in our lives and we can all get together again later on this year. Fingers crossed. Meanwhile, we'll continue to do our best to host online monthly meetings. And we're trying to do other things as well. If anyone has any suggestions, then please do contact one of us, myself or Mark, with your suggestion, and we'll see if it's technically feasible. We've also got our Twitter and Facebook group, social media, and Mark sends out regular email updates with society information, astronomy events, and details online events. Contact Mark via the website if you want to be added to that list. And members, by the way, are already in that list, so you should already be seeing those emails. Okay, swiftly moving on, because I know you haven't all logged in to listen to me. Or maybe you have, I don't know. Last month, our guest speaker gave us a talk all the way from Hershey in Pennsylvania. So this month, to give you some variety, our guest speaker, Alan Cross, comes all the way from Liverpool. Alan is the European Space Agency Business Applications UK Ambassador, based here in the Northwest at the STFC in Daresbury. That means Alan is tasked with helping local businesses understand, participate, and use existing space assets to create new and innovative services. I think I got that off your LinkedIn page, Alan. So I'm keen to know much more about what Alan does and what Alan's role is and how it helps us in the Northwest. So I'm now going to hand you over to Alan, and it gives me great pleasure to introduce tonight's guest speaker, Alan Cross. And at that point, we normally have a round of applause. So if you'd like to applause, please click on your applause button while I release my screen and pass it over to Alan. So over to you, Alan.
Thank you very much. Let me make sure I get the right one. Share. How's that? How's that look? You got a full screen version there?
That looks... Yeah, that's good.
All good. Okay, great stuff. Well, everyone, let me make sure I've got the right one. Thank you very much for having me. I'm just going to make sure I've got the right one. There we go. My name is Alan Cross. As Steve said there, I'm the European Space Agency's Business Applications Regional Ambassador for Northwest England and North Wales. It's a bit of a mouthful, but that's the title. That's what I've got to go out under. And I'm hosted regionally by STFC at Daresbury, which is technically in the Liverpool City region, although it's just down the road from Warrington. Within that, I'm also the co-lead on developing a Northwest space strategy, which is currently ongoing. So what I'm going to do this evening is I'm just going to chat to you about who I am, where I've come from, how I've got to leading on this strategy, tell you a little bit about the work of ESA business applications, but then really we're going to dive on in and we're going to look at what is the space industry? and what is the Northwest doing and what will it be doing? So without further ado, a brief overview. I'm going to be looking at, generally speaking, Liverpool in space, what is the space industry, why the Northwest, and how we're going to move forward. I'm just going to do a slight change there. There we go. I don't think you saw any of that, but I've just changed my screen around. So with ESA business applications, which is, there we go. So this is my day-to-day work, is ESA business applications. My background isn't a traditional science background. As a young man, I really battled between the arts and the sciences. I should point out, I should have said this earlier actually, I am just getting over a bout of very mild COVID. Unfortunately, one of the side effects is a dreaded brain fog. So if I suddenly appear to lose train of thought or lose words, I apologize in advance. I'll do my best to stick with it. So as a young man, I was torn between the arts and the sciences, and I went down the artistic route. I trained as an actor and went on to become an internationally ignored jazz singer. And I still am very fortunate enough to be able to do some gigs every now and then around that, which is a lot of fun. But as I left drama school and was working as an actor, I became more and more interested in space, which I'd always been fascinated by, but that hardened as I was getting older. And so in 2007, I joined the British Interplanetary Society, and I realized then that I'd found my tribe, that these were the people I wanted to be speaking to. Lots of events were done via them, and I engaged as much as I could. Even though they're based in London, I did what I could to engage with that. And that introduced me to some very interesting people in the Northwest and in Liverpool. And then in 2013, the UK government started to make noises about spaceports in the UK, about launching into space from the UK, from the British Isles. And so I scratched my head and I thought, well, what about John Lennon Airport for horizontal launch? It's east-west facing. There's a big estuary with 5 kilometers of water. You could extend the runway 500-600 meters or so and have a spaceport. And so I put together a presentation much like this. I spoke at a local science event, and from that a group of like-minded people came up to me and said, let's look at this. And we responded to the UK government, to their request for information about locations for spaceports. And we responded looking at John Lennon. And we didn't think it was a good idea, ultimately, purely because of the complexity of the airspace due to the proximity of Manchester Airport. That was the only real stickler that we could find there. But in doing so, we discovered an awful lot about the space industry and an awful lot about the Northwest. And so we reorganized and became the Northern Space Consortium, which is still in operation. I was chairman for a short period of time, and then I was then offered a role with the European Space Agency business applications to really be based in the region and to help businesses use space data. So this is what ESA business applications is. And by space data, we mean, very broadly speaking, we're talking about the use of GPS and other systems like GLONASS and Baidu and Galileo. We're talking about Earth observation, and we're talking about satellite communications. And we help a huge range of businesses. Normally, I'm not talking to space businesses. Normally, I'm talking to non-space businesses. For example, in Lancashire, there's a company called AWOL TV, and they do lots of event photography, on-location stuff in the Amazon, but they also do a lot of sports event photography, like marathons and such. And the industry standard, if anyone's done anything like this, you'll know. You go and you run, there's lots of people taking photographs, professional photographers, all part of the system. And then your pictures are uploaded, and it can take about 2 days to get your images online. And that's because they're taking thousands and thousands of very high-res pictures. There's lots of pictures to be done, and uploading them is a problem. It's not like you can just use the mobile phone network, because there's so much data to go up. And so we've helped AWOL to use dedicated satellite communications, and they can now do it in real time. They do some very clever facial recognition and whatnot built in, and quality control on site, and then it's uploaded. And so by the time you finish the race, your photographs are online for you to buy. And when we first were chatting to them, they were like, oh, in 10 years, we'd love to be given the big international guys a run for their money. You know, the people who do the Chicago Marathon, the London Marathon, the New York Marathon. We'd love to give them a run for the money in 10 years' time. And as soon as they went public with the work that we'd done with them on uploading in real time, those big guys were knocking on their door. So they were expecting to start 10 years. We did it with them in about 18 months. So this is just some of the stuff that I do day to day. Now, I'll leave aside business applications, but if you are interested, we are all over the country, so do get in touch. So with STFC, who host me locally, as you can see on this map, all the other ambassadors are hosted by universities, but I'm hosted by STFC at Daresbury. And one of the things I started talking about as soon as I started there was about a space cluster. This is leading on from the work that we discovered with the Northern Space Consortium. The black dot on this picture that you can see is Harwell, which is a big science site. It's the sister site for Daresbury. And we also have a site up in Edinburgh as well, the Royal Observatory. But Harwell is the UK space gateway. It's whenever the government talks about space or big science, they tend to be focused on Harwell. And at Harwell, they have a space cluster with a dedicated role there supporting them. And they have an energy cluster and a health cluster. Now, in the Northwest, we do have clusters based out of STFC Daresbury. We've got a health technology cluster. There's a new digital cluster. And my push was always, why aren't we doing space? And the response was always come back was that, prove it. If we could prove that there's a kernel here, that there's nascent space happening, and that it's worthwhile us trying to develop it, then let's prove it, and we'll talk about it. And so recently the UK Space Agency put up some money for the development of regional space clusters. And I thought, well, let's give that a go. And we were successful in winning some money to progress this stage. It wasn't just us who were successful. Leeds City region also received some money, as did the west of England around Bath and Bristol, and the area around Portsmouth, Southampton as well as Scotland, Northern Ireland and Wales. So I'm going to move on to that in a little bit. But first, I just want to talk a bit about Liverpool. I am from Liverpool. I live in Liverpool. I'm very passionate about Liverpool. And because I'm talking to the Liverpool Astronomical Society, I should probably speak very briefly about Jeremiah Horrocks. For those of you who don't know, I'm sure you all do. He was born in 1618 in Toxteth near Otterspool Park. If you ever go into Otterspool and you take, not the main path, but you take the Woodland Walk, so if you've come in from the Egbert Road end and you take the Woodland Walk up to the right, as you walk along, as you approach the railway tracks, you'll see there's a house there off to your right. That house sits pretty much on the same spot as the house that Jeremiah Horrocks was born in. This was a young man, as you can see here. He attended University of Cambridge aged 13. He was scrubbing floors and washing dishes to pay his way. But he was something of a prodigy. He was the first to accurately describe the orbit of the moon, building on the work of Newton, of course, and Kepler before him. The first to predict a transit of Venus in 1639. He and a friend were the only ones to see it. And he did all that before the age of 22 when he died. We don't know what he died of, but he died young. And he's buried in Toxteth Cemetery. I can, if it wasn't night, I could pretty much see Toxteth Cemetery from my window here by Sefton Park. But he is commemorated at Westminster Abbey. And even if there was only Jeremiah Horrocks to talk about, I would say that that's a pretty significant contribution to astronomy that Liverpool has done, even if it's just Jeremiah Horrocks. Fortunately, it's not just him. Skipping forward slightly, the British Interplanetary Society, whilst it's now based in a big old townhouse next to MI6 headquarters in London, the BIS was founded on Dale Street in 1933. The first meeting of it actually took place on Whitechapel, where that mobile phone shop is by American Pizza Slice. Just to the left of that, the building's not there anymore, where the little chapel is. And it was in a room above a coffee shop. It was a guy called Phil Cleater who lived on the Wirral, put an ad in the Echo and said, does anyone else want to talk about rockets and spaceships and stuff? And they met, and the British Interplanetary Society was born. They did the first serious studies into moon landings in 1938, spacesuits, interstellar starships. That was Project Daedalus in 1978 and Project Icarus in 2009. Patented the first device for use in space because they presumed that the first moon mission would be using rotation for centrifugal forces to simulate gravity, and that they would need to navigate by the stars. So they invented a device that allowed the people inside the spaceship to look out and navigate, that corrected for the rotation of the craft. As I say, HQ is now in London, and it is the world's oldest surviving space advocacy group. At the time, there were similar groups in America and Germany, but they were eventually absorbed into big national organizations. So the BIS is the only one that survives in its original form. In this photograph on the far right, you can see one of the founder members who would go on to become a future president. Their headquarters in Vauxhall in London is named after him. That is the iconic Arthur C. Clarke on the right there. So the BIS was founded in Liverpool by a group of ballsy scousers who wanted to change the world, which, as we know, sometimes, very often, result in the world being changed. Into the realms of fiction now. Dan Dare, Pilot of the Future. I'm a bit young to have read Dan Dare first time round. I know they restarted it back in the 80s, but his first appearance was in 1950, and the illustrators were based in Southport. The character itself of Dan Dare was born in Manchester in 1967 in his fictional biography. So the original comics in the 50s were set around the late 90s, early 2000s. But World Space HQ in the comics, which is this place here, here you can see Dan Dare in his the Anastasia, Annie taken off, going into space. World Space HQ was in Formby, on an artificial island that they apparently built out there. So a little bit of fun there, but this is just a little taste of some of the history of Liverpool going connected with space going back several hundred years. So let's get into it a bit more now. Let's look at what is the space sector. What are we talking about when we say space? So globally, space is going to be worth, last year in 2020, about $400 billion. And that's a third of that is upstream. So that's manufacturing of the satellites and of the ground stations and the instrumentation that's used. And as well as the operations of those craft, both in low Earth orbit and in deep space as well. And again, about the ground stations connected. But about 2/3 of it is downstream, which is what I've been traditionally working in, which is the use of the data. It's the fact that you can push a button and get a pizza to your house and track the pizza as it's coming. It's that you can use telemedicine to do operations on people in different countries. An enormous range. You can monitor the environment, you can monitor shipping, track logistics, all these things. So that's the global sector. And the UK tracks straight in with that. So we're looking at about £15 billion. That's not government spending, by the way. That's turnover of businesses in the UK. And that splits down to about 13% of manufacturing. Again, the UK builds a lot of satellites. Yes, you have satellite technology, part of Airbus now, down in, funnily enough, Surrey. But you also have up in Glasgow, nowhere on Earth, apart from California, builds more spacecraft than central Glasgow, because they build these small CubeSats. And we have a real history in Britain of building spacecraft. We build a lot of them. And I'm sure many of you are aware of Galileo and the problems surrounding that with Brexit. That's purely about the manufacturing of the spacecraft. We'll be able to use Galileo itself, as everyone will. But Britain is so strong when it comes to manufacturing space components that it has caused an international problem that we're now outside of Galileo. But again, about 2/3 of what the UK does is about the use of the data from space. We support about 42,000 jobs and very high exports. Now in the Northwest, there are about 75 known space organizations already. This is before we've done any of the work with the space strategy to try and find out what's going on. About 75 kind of self-identify as space companies, about 2,500 jobs. However, that is only 0.05% of the UK space sector. This is 2016-17, so these numbers are based on the 2018 report, The Size and Health of the UK Space Economy. There is currently, the survey is just finished today, I think, maybe it's up until Monday, for the 2020 report. So according to the official figures, the UK has about £15 billion worth of space turnover, but the Northwest, so this is Liverpool, Manchester, Cheshire, Lancashire, Cumbria, only generates half of 1%. So you might ask, well then, what is the point of trying to do space in the Northwest since we do so little of it? Again, to reiterate, the UK space sector is about just over 2/3 downstream digital. It's about 1/3 upstream. The rest, the other 3% that's missing from there is ancillary service like insurance and legal stuff. And the government is committed to growing the UK space sector from about 5% of global share to about 10% of global share by 2030. Now, when they first came up with this figure, when they first set this as a goal back in 2013, they were expecting that by 2030, the space economy globally might be worth $400 billion by 2030. We now know that it's likely that the global space economy surpassed $400 billion in 2020. So the space sector is growing in a way that no one really saw, to be honest. We expected growth, but not like we've seen. And the UK is committed to growing its share of that. Now the Northwest, let's look at this. The Northwest, two things to bear in mind here. 2/3 digital, 1/3 manufacturing and operations. That's what the space economy globally looks like. The Northwest is the largest digital economy in the UK outside of London. It's the largest aerospace hub in Europe, 4th largest in the world. Mostly actually around Preston and Blackburn, around that way. It's a huge, and that's just aerospace. That's before we look at the advanced manufacturing that's involved with building Britain's nuclear submarines, or with building advanced automotive, and a whole range of things that we have. So with the space sector being 2/3 digital, 1/3 manufacturing, the Northwest absolutely dominates in terms of digital economy and in terms of advanced manufacturing. And I think the reason why we haven't done it in the past is because we've been so busy doing other stuff. We've been so busy building fighter aircraft and nuclear submarines and supercomputers and this kind of thing, that we haven't looked at space. We haven't needed to. But what's now happening is all of the local enterprise partnerships in the Northwest identify advanced manufacturing and the digital sectors as critical to their future. So all of these economic plans, all of the growth strategies that we see coming out from all of the regions, all of the authorities in the Northwest, all of them have front and center advanced manufacturing and the digital sectors as critical for their growth. Now that's space. That's another word for space. So let's look at a little bit of what space is actually happening in the Northwest. On the right hand side there, you can see color-coded Northwest. The top dark green is Cumbria, red Lancashire, purple Liverpool City region, light green is Manchester City, Greater Manchester, sorry, and in yellow orangey there is Cheshire. So up in Cumbria, you got Sellafield. Now what's Sellafield got to do with space, you might ask? More than you'd expect. So there's something called RTGs, radioisotope thermal generators. These are used in deep space exploration. Sometimes they're used on the surface of Mars, the Mars rovers, for example. Basically, when you start getting further away from the sun, you start to struggle with solar power, and so these RTGs are used. Usually they're using, plutonium and stuff. However, there is a global shortage of these radioactive fuels. And what Sellafield did, alongside the University of Leicester, alongside the National Nuclear Laboratories, was they mined the nuclear waste in storage at Sellafield and extracted something called americium. And they then showed that americium could be used as an RTG fuel. So the work being done there at Sellafield might be a really good way of dealing with our nuclear waste, as well as a good way of generating income, because you're going to sell this as a fuel for the RTGs. It's a win all round. Sellafield is currently in the stages of decommissioning and of cleaning up. That will take several decades. But a lot of people in that area, they rely very much on that site at Sellafield. And Sellafield is in no hurry to shut down. But they want to maintain those jobs. And so they're already looking at different ways. What can they do? They have a lot of facilities there that could be used. And can they be used for space? We don't know. This is what we're going to try and find out. Of course, you also have supply chains around nuclear, but around the submarines and these kind of things as well. Carlisle Interconnect Technologies, they're based in Lancashire. They are part of the supply chains for the F-35 and various aircraft like that. They actually already do some stuff in space. They do kind of RF coaxial solutions. Excuse me a second. And they're just one of a number of organizations in Lancashire that are already doing space. Now, the thing is, yes, they know they could be doing more space and they're interested in that and they're actively pursuing it. But for every Carlisle Interconnect Technologies, there'll be several others who could be doing space who aren't doing space because they don't really understand what it is. They don't have that sector knowledge. So hopefully we can start to help introduce them to what they're capable of doing. In the Liverpool City region, ESA Space Solutions. So I work for ESA Business Applications, which is part of Space Solutions. So Daresbury is home to all the ESA Space Solutions programs. Harwell isn't. Harwell doesn't have STFC at Harwell, sorry. They don't have an ESA Business Applications regional ambassador. They do host our network coordinator and our bid specialist, but and they do have the Business Incubation Centre, which we also have here at Daresbury, which is also in Edinburgh. But ESA Space Solutions is based here in the Liverpool City region. It has been for a number of years. If you don't know, down at STFC, Daresbury is also something called the Hartree Centre. It is a high-performance supercomputer called Scafell Pike. There are several others in the same structure there. But this is one of the most powerful supercomputers in the country. 3.6 petaflops, I believe, which is what my laptop does. Will take 20 years to do. This thing can do in 10 minutes. And the way STFC, the Science Technology Facilities Council, essentially what they do is they own big science and technology facilities, one that universities and researchers and also private businesses can't afford to build themselves. And so the government owns these large things, radio telescopes and particle accelerators and supercomputers, and they own them, and then other people, researchers, businesses can use them for their advantage. So down here in the Liverpool City region, we've got a lot of capability around digital and big data crunching. Moving on to Manchester, the area around southern Manchester is home to a lot of comms manufacturers, again, mostly for the aero industry. But for example, SatixFy is a satellite communications company. These are not an internet provider. They build hardware, they do chipset integration, they build the phased antennas that fly into space, that communicate satellite to satellite as well as to the ground. So these are a really important player. They're based all over the country, but they've got a major operation there in South Manchester. Also, what you've got with Manchester is a big focus, yes, for digital, but crucially for cybersecurity. So you have by saying this, they may well tune in and start listening. You have GCHQ, who are based, who have an active presence in Manchester. It's no secret. And because of that, you've then got cybersecurity officers for BAE Systems, for Raytheon Space Solutions, Raytheon, sorry, as well as Raytheon Space Solutions. Their space operations is based at Salford. So Manchester already has, on its own, really, this nascent, lots of interesting pieces happening. And of course, I haven't even mentioned the universities yet. You know, Liverpool has the Astrophysics Research Institute, which runs the Liverpool and telescope, and hopefully the Liverpool 2 telescope soon. They're very interested in helping help to kickstart a private industry in the Liverpool City region that will build astronomical sensors for the satellite industry, for building small scale devices to go into space. And of course, the University of Manchester has a space systems research that does a lot of low Earth orbit, very extremely low Earth orbit satellite research, as well as ion propulsion. Of course, the Square Kilometre Array. Today is a fairly auspicious day because if you don't know about, I think you've actually had a speaker from the Square Kilometre Array. So this is based in Cheshire, run by the University of Manchester in partnership with, because of Jodrell Bank. Square Kilometre Array, the international organisation that runs it, this big intergovernmental body, which is, you know, up there with you know, ESA, or the organisation that runs CERN, that runs the Large Hadron Collider. As far as I know, today they became an official entity. Everything was signed off, done. It came into effect today. Square Kilometre Array, you know, is an astronomical instrument that will stretch from the west coast of South Africa to the east coast of to the west coast of Australia. An astronomical instrument, essentially the size of the planet. It will generate, when it's online by 2030, it will generate as much data as currently comprises the internet. A huge amount of data. So this is a little snapshot of what space looks like in the Northwest. And yet, we're still only doing 0.05% of the UK space economy. So why the Northwest? And I'll hammer this home again, because the space industry is a big growth sector. The UK is committed to forcing that growth, to promoting that growth so it becomes a real global leader. It is about 2/3 digital applications. It is about 1/3 manufacturing and operations. And the Northwest is the biggest digital economy in the UK outside London and the largest aerospace hub in Europe. Its local priorities are digital and advanced manufacturing. So you can see the two fit together. This is a significant opportunity for businesses and for research across our region to access untapped high growth areas. Which brings us on to the Northwest Space Strategy. So we aim to change this. This is the first step. This is one small step. You may have seen this in the news. They're talking about a Northwest Space Hub. That makes it sound like a physical building. That's not what we're talking about yet. What we're talking about now is the space strategy and how we do that. So this is the partnership that is currently putting together this space strategy. So these are the local enterprise partnerships of Liverpool City region, Greater Manchester, Lancashire, Cheshire, and Cumbria. These are the bodies that which local government interfaces with the private sector and with the research sector as well, to come up with that economic policy to identify the areas of strength and growth that should be focused on and figure out ways to promote them. So all 5 of these in the Northwest are on board. Now, as I mentioned, there are other regions around the country that also received this kind of funding. So I said the Liverpool the Leeds City region is looking just at the Leeds City region. They may be looking slightly further afield, but that's their focus. The area around Bath and Bristol, west of England, the area around Portsmouth, Southampton. None of them are looking at this kind of scale. This huge stretch with these 5 LEPs all working together in tandem. And it's not just the LEPs on their own. UKRI, it's UK Research and Innovation. These are the national research councils. we're working with them. So STFC is the lead through myself and my colleague, but also the Natural Environment Research Council, the Engineering and Physical Sciences Research Council, Innovate UK, all looking at how can unlocking the Northwest, how can they help? How can not only can they help, but actually what can the research councils gain from it? We also have the Northern Space Consortium involved. Again, this is a small volunteer-run organisation that does great work, that has been at the forefront of pushing for this strategy, of pushing for the Northwest to do more space. We have the Northwest Aerospace Alliance, which is the industry body for the space, the aerospace sector in the Northwest. And very interestingly, something called the Innovation Caucus. So this is run out of Oxford Brookes University. And they've done some work in the past with Innovate UK, because while space in the Northwest is, as I say, a small fraction of what's going on nationally, it turns out that when it comes to accessing innovation support, the North in general, but the Northwest specifically, wildly underperforms. We ask for less money, we ask for it less often, we get it less often, and we get even less than we asked for. So Innovate UK teamed up with the Innovation Caucus to figure out what was happening. Was it a cultural problem? Was there some bias built into the application system? And from that, we've connected with the Innovation Caucus. So they're really helping us to look at how do we make this strategy work? This is not just high level, oh, you should do this, oh, you should do that, off you go. We're really working to make sure that the actions that come from this have a real function and helping to change that culture so people can start, businesses, research, individuals can help to start to access the vast wealth of support that's available. So these are the partners on the space strategy. So what is the space strategy? What are we looking at? 4 things really: mapping, analysis, actions, and cooperation. So building on the work that's already been done by the existing consortium members and others, because we're not doing this in isolation. We're talking to every single university in the region. We have an industry day. We're inviting industry, not just those already doing space, but those interested or think they could or know that their competition are doing space. We're inviting them to talk to us, to tell us what they're doing, so we can figure out what they want. What does success look like to them? How can we help? So this mapping work is initially being done. As I say, we've identified 75 organizations already in the Northwest who self-identify as space. These are the ones who are generating the 0.05% of the UK space economy. There are more. It's as simple as that. There must be more. And so this mapping work is being done actually by PricewaterhouseCoopers, big international consultancy. They've got a space office in Paris, and they're working with their local on-the-ground officers in the region to really figure out who's doing space in the Northwest. What are they good at? What are their strengths? And then comes the analysis, is understanding those strengths in relation to existing and emerging trends in the space sector. Are our skills already in demand and we just don't know it? And the other side of this, of course, is identifying where the gaps are in the market that no one's really filling at the moment. And can we fill them? How can we pivot? How can we do that? So that's the analysis. And crucially out of this are the actions. This is not just a talk and shop. This is not just a high level bit of paper that gets sent back to the UK Space Agency and no one sees it again. That is not what we're doing. We are working on the ground with the local enterprise partnerships and the universities and the businesses so that we can develop actions. We want to grow the space sector in line with British growth up to 2030 and beyond. How do we do it? What can we do? So it's enabling this key growth and innovation of sectors. For example, the aerospace sector, for example, cybersecurity, these kind of things. And actually what we want from it is, yes, an overall strategy with hopefully some leadership being provided by STFC in the same manner that they have these existing cluster development roles dedicated roles for health technologies and for digital already in the region. We're pushing, well, I'm pushing certainly, so that there be a dedicated space cluster here in the Northwest with its own manager, someone looking after it, dedicated to do that. But also for each individual LEP, Cumbria should have something that they can go, right, here's the big thing for us. Lancashire, one for them. Greater Manchester, for Liverpool, for Cheshire. Each one should have very real, very tangible outcomes from this, that they know, yes, they can do that, and they'll work with that, and they won't be in isolation. They'll be working with partners, not just in the other LEPs, in the other regions, but across the country, and crucially, internationally. And that's where the cooperation comes in. Yes, we'll be competitive sometimes, but I think we've learned in this part of the country, we've learned the hard way what happens when we squabble amongst each other. We need to really support each other in what we're doing. So it's working, yes, together, but also with those national partners, like the research councils, like universities, like other parts of the UK that are doing space and growing space in various ways, but working with those big international partners as well. This is it's global, you know, it's not happens in isolation. Space certainly doesn't. So this is about really upskilling the Northwest. This is really about job creation. This is about economic development. So the future, what do we want? What are the outcomes? Now, I would remind you all that the work we've spoke about there about that mapping and analysis work is currently ongoing. So I can't go into too much detail, but that's where we are. From this, we're just about putting things together to figure out, okay, here's how we move it forward. But generally speaking, what we're going to be looking at for this space strategy is, let's say 10 years from now, and understanding this is critical, absolutely critical. If you talk to people who live in Stevenage or Portsmouth or Bristol or Leicester or Nottingham or Durham or Glasgow or Edinburgh or the Highlands, they know someone who's doing space, not just as a hobby, but working in space. For them, space is a very real everyday thing. And it is for us in the Northwest. But that message hasn't quite got across. When I talk to businesses about space, sometimes they go, well, what's that got to do then? And they say, well, you know, I came here in an Uber. That's space. They go, how's that space? Well, because of satellites. Oh, is that it? And you go, yeah, but every time you look for your location on your phone, you're interacting with $1 billion worth of space technology. It's absolutely space. So the understanding part is critical. Businesses and policymakers and researchers and private citizens across the region will understand the importance of space. Now, this is multifaceted. This is happening already with the likes of Starship from SpaceX, and then slightly throwing the fox among the chickens here with Starlink as well. And I was talking to astronomers, that's always going to be challenging, and I'm sure someone will pick up on that later. But people are aware that things are happening. They're aware that we're going back to the moon and onto Mars. They're aware of things happening on a bigger scale, and that Britain wants to do stuff and is doing stuff. A wonderful colleague of mine, Emily Gravestock, was on Radio 4 earlier today speaking about this. But people on the ground here need to understand that it's happening on their doorstep. This is not something off in the future. The whole point of this is for growth, so that our industries and our research institutions can use space to support existing activities. As I mentioned, like the sports photography company, revolutionizing the sports photography, the multi-million pound industry of sports photography, revolutionized it from a church hall in Lancashire, using space. But also to expand into new arenas. And again, jobs, the growth of the regional space activities. And that coupled with our existing strengths, our existing expertise, we can build stealth fighters, we can do it. Build nuclear submarines, we can do it. Supercars, no problem. Supercomputers, easy. Financial technologies, fine, not a problem. Astronomy, done it. We build telescopes all the time, we do it. Let's do it more. Let's figure out how we can do more of that stuff, especially now, whatever your political persuasion, whatever your opinions are on our exit from the European Union. we have to do things differently now. So this is real low-hanging fruit. We are very good at advanced manufacturing. We are very good at digital, but we're only doing a tiny bit of space. There's lots there that we can capture. Crucially from this, we're going to need leadership. And as I say, hopefully a dedicated leadership role, yes, within the region, but also helping the policymakers in local government who make those economic decisions, helping them to understand space so that it's not something that the Americans do. Oh, that's something that they do in London. It's something that we are doing and that they know and that they want more of. The reason for that is that the Northwest can take a leadership role so that we become a major force in the space sector, nationally, internationally, and beyond. And I'd like to just take this last 5 minutes in a way that so often I do, which is I have a background in theatre, so I tend to be a bit theatrical. Back in 2007 was Liverpool's 800th birthday. And at the time, there was a lot of talk of the golden age of Liverpool. When all of the ships came to our shore, 1800 through to 1950, 1960. Thousands of ships, huge wealth came through Liverpool. And we've an option because my niece, who's 4 years old, we can make a choice now so that when her grandchildren, maybe she'll live that long, but when her grandchildren are looking at Liverpool's 900th birthday in 2107, the option that we have now is that they can say the golden age of Liverpool, 1800 to 1950, or they can be in that golden age of Liverpool. Our best times can be ahead of us. We need to learn and adapt and do what we do well, learn how to do it in other sectors. That's critical. For my niece, hopefully she'll get the space bug from a Uncle Alan. Hopefully, I'm working hard at it, and she appears to be working. She can do what she wants, but hopefully she'll get it. And let's say she goes to Liverpool and does astrophysics, and then she goes on to Leeds and does a master's, and then she goes to Manchester and does a PhD. Then what? Because I quite like her to have the option to stay here, not just to have to go off to Stevenage or to London or to Boca Chica in Texas, but to stay in Liverpool or Manchester or Leeds or Preston or Carlisle or Chester. She can stay here. She can work and bring her skills here to generate that knowledge and that work. That's the option we face. It's one small step that we're currently undergoing, but it is the one sector that has potentially infinite growth. And that means securing jobs, high quality jobs. It means securing economic growth. It means improving the lives of people on Earth for generations to come. I hope that's been a useful talk. I do believe I've got 2 minutes to go, but I think I'll call it there, and we're going to take a short break. And then I'll come back. Steve, it's okay. I'll come back and we'll do some questions and answers. Is that okay?
Yes, Alan. Yeah. Thank you very much. Everybody. Okay, fantastic. Yeah, so we're going to take a 5-minute comfort break. So it's just on 8 o'clock now. So we'll restart at 8:05. Don't forget that we're still recording this and you're still live on YouTube. So just be aware of that. And we'll go on to the question and answer sessions, Alan. And we've got quite a few questions when we come back again in about 5 minutes time. Okay. Thank you, everybody. And thanks, Alan, again. See you all in 5 minutes. Hello, everybody. Welcome back. It's 8:05, so we'll continue. So you can hear me, Steve. I'm just going to ask Alan to put his microphone back on again, and he's the only one with the video on, so you'll see Alan, but you will hear me. I'll read some of the questions out. So as soon as Alan gets back, we can start doing that.
I'm here.
Oh, okay, brilliant. Okay, so let me just go back. So we've got quite a lot of questions. Yeah, okay. Someone asked me to mention William Lassell, of course, as we've mentioned, famous Liverpool astronomers. Although he wasn't born here, he did his observations in Victorian Liverpool.
Yeah, and I will point out, William Lassell, of course, I did just run through just 3 examples of space in Liverpool, but you've also got Tecwen Roberts, was it, who was born in West Derby, moved to Anglesey, ended up going through Canada and into NASA, and is the guy who invented the phrase AOK when working on the missions there. We've also, and right now, the head of the European Space Agency's division that looks after human and robotic exploration, so the really exciting bits, is Dr. David Parker, who went to school in West Derby, who went to St. Eddie's. So one of the top people in East as a Scouser.
Good. Be good to get him on.
Wouldn't it? Yeah. He used to be in charge of the UK Space Agency as well.
Oh, interesting.
See what you can do for us, Alan. Put in a word for us.
Yeah.
Hello, boss. Okay, so got a couple of questions about Spaceport and Cornwall, and could you give us an update on the Spaceport at Cornwall, and does that mean there's unlikely to be any other regions that would develop their own spaceports, or does it help make the case for other regions?
Yeah, thanks. Great question. So up until fairly recently, actually, up until the last few years, as far as I know, the UK government's policy was that they were supporting a single spaceport. And then they went, well, actually, a horizontal launch, horizontal launch, takeoff and landing like a plane was one thing, but maybe a vertical launch for polar orbits. And some of you one thing that often comes up in these discussions is people say, well, Britain can't launch into space because it's nowhere near the equator. And that means it can't go into space. Well, it means you can't do equatorial launches from mainland, but you can do polar launches up over the North Pole and round. And they're really useful. They're really, really useful orbits for Earth observation and also for some satellite communications as well. So where we are with Spaceport at the moment is that the government had changed its policy into one of supporting the development of multiple sites. So these aren't government sites, but the government's given seed funding to help us, some viable ones come into play, and then let the market take over. So Spaceport Cornwall, for example, Miles Carden, who was in charge there, has now left. Who was excellent, and they've got a great team behind them. But they've got Virgin Orbit signed up. So this isn't Virgin Galactic. Virgin Galactic is the one that carries people. Virgin Orbit is basically a 747 with the Launcher One rocket slung underneath. And that will operate from Spaceport Cornwall in the coming years. They're already looking at supply chains and ground infrastructure there. And they won't be the only ones. There will be others who can launch there. And you're talking launches frequency of maybe once a month or so to start off with. But you've also got Glasgow Prestwick, who also received some funding from the government in order to fund that research for horizontal launch. And let's not forget Snowdonia. Let's not forget Llanbedr at Snowdonia Aerospace Centre. Just north of Barmouth, south of Harlech. They also have options to launch spaceport operations. Now, from chatting to them, it seems they're unlikely to look at the kind of commercial launch and people and satellites into space, but what they are focusing on, it seems, is the site as an R&D site. I think they can, with horizontal launches, they can get tantalizingly close to space, as in, 98 kilometers or something, 96 kilometers, I think, with 100 kilometers being the common line, the boundary of space. They almost get to it. And so you can do quite a lot of microgravity with parabolic flights. You can do engine tests and whatnot. And of course, there's a huge controlled airspace just up the coast there, because when Llanbedr was an RAE station, it was used for pilots to train to dogfight and stuff. So there's quite a lot that will be happening there. And that'll be connected with drones and various things as well out of Snowdonia. So there are multiple sites. That's just a horizontal launch. In terms of the vertical launch, you're looking at Spaceport Sutherland up in the north coast of Scotland, as well as sites in the Hebrides, Spaceport Shetland. So there's a lot going on, and it is happening, and the government is dedicated to it, because we build so many satellites, and we design them, and we're really good at it, and we operate them in space, and the whole on that entire chain, the bit that's missing is we don't launch them. So if we can corner that, if we can get past that market, that suddenly opens up Britain's offer for space.
Fantastic. Okay. Thank you, Alan. I hope that answers your question, Phil and Matthew. A comment that somebody made. Shall I mention this person's name? I'll tell you what. I'll tell you what he said first. One idea I've had for a few years is for the LAS to launch its own satellite, a low-cost CubeSat, as a project, perhaps with other organisations, businesses involved. At the time I first thought about it, it was incredibly expensive. But is it something that is becoming feasible? And if so, what sort of ballpark costs would we likely to be looking at here? And that was from Mark, very innovative Mark. So from Mark Galvin.
Yeah. I mentioned Starlink earlier, and of course for astronomers, including myself, because just up here I've got a Celestial Astromaster 130 EQMD. So this entry level one, but I do enjoy astronomy myself. Starlink seems, not just Starlink, but those big constellations low Earth orbit, it seems going to be a problem. It seems almost inevitable that Jodrell Bank, for example, will have to cease at some point in the next few decades. We'll have to cease operations as a radio telescope, because there will be constant washing of EM radiation on it from these. So for a long time, I've been thinking the answer to that, there's lots of different facets to it, but part of the answer to that would be for people like yourselves to be launching your own space telescopes, which is exactly what Mark just said. You may scoff at the idea, but a CubeSat, I'm just looking around my little home office to see if I've got anything of comparable size. Maybe, okay. So something like this battery pack. So that's a bit too small, but you can imagine scaling that up, something the size of a shoebox, maybe, right? So a CubeSat is separated into units. You can have a 1 unit CubeSat, which is 10 centimeters by 10 centimeters by 10 centimeters and weighs a kilogram. And if you think you can't do much with that, well, just look at the camera that I've got on my phone and in this size. Now scale that up. Scale that up so it's 10 centimeters at a side. Put in their power. Maybe it folds out. You can. There's a lot you can pack in now into a single unit. You can make 3 units or 6 units or 12 units, but even in a single unit, you can put a lot in. So the price cost for that, for the launch costs for a long time, for decades, sat between $10,000 and $20,000 per kilogram, which would put something like that the little CubeSat out the way, even if you ignore the fact that technology doesn't exist to make it work. Now, SpaceX quotes, I think, $3,000 for a cube for per kilogram. So suddenly it's not ruinously expensive. So the question then becomes about your development costs. How do you get your technology into that cube? That's where it could be expensive. However, as you mentioned, Mark, there are different societies out there you can club together. As I have mentioned, and I might be putting my foot in it now, the Astrophysics Research Institute at John Moores, they're very interested in developing the abilities for local businesses to develop astronomical sensors for use on CubeSats. So maybe there's a use case study that you can do in which you can get in on that. Maybe. I mean, right now, I don't know. You could probably do the whole thing for about 10 grand. Now, 5 years, 10 years from now, Lord knows, might be as low as £1,000. Maybe, maybe some of the people, even a few years older than me on this call, within our lifetimes, maybe it's going to be cheaper for you to launch your own version of Hubble than it is to get a telescope in your back garden. Maybe.
Interesting. So there's a thought. Have your own Hubble Space Telescope in your back garden, up in space. Yeah. How fantastic is that? Okay, thank you for that one, Mark. I hope that answers your question, Mark, and gave you some food for thought as to what you want to do next. And we've got a council meeting on Monday, so we can discuss it then. Okay, moving on. Are you able to provide any further details on the Rolls-Royce UK Space Agency nuclear space propulsion project that hasn't been discussed in the recent press releases?
The answer to that is no. Not really. It's not something that I'm privy to. No, but I do know that the likes of there are some people in various organisations that are interested in sites in the northwest. In the sites of waste. Sellafield would be a great, in my opinion, Sellafield would be a great place to start doing some of that work. But we've also got great places, around Preston, and maybe they could work together on that. But it does seem that if you want to do nuclear power in space, the northwest is just a no-brainer. It really is. So I would hope, and I will certainly be pushing for that. I don't mind telling you that, even as the lead on this space strategy, that I will be pushing to have that in that strategy. That this is something that we should be looking at very serious.
Okay, thank you very much. And something related is the strategy in the related space industry in the northwest. Something the likes of the LAS can or should be more involved with. I think you've sort of partially answered that by saying, well, there's an idea for you.
Yeah, exactly. This is the space strategy is there as a roadmap. It will be there as a roadmap for everyone. It's not just something for central government to have in a sealed envelope and never to be seen the light of day. It will be publicly available. And a big part of that, the most basic thing is telling people it's there. We are going to push it out as best we can through the media, but for people who are already space enabled and space aware, like yourselves, if you can be telling people that we're doing this, that's going to be really helpful. And yeah, once it's out there, look at it. You might decide that the next step is to join in with Liverpool John Moores and build that CubeSat. I mean, what a great thing that would be. That could be, step one, maybe a whole fleet of them, who knows? So yeah, please do. This space is for everyone. It's for everyone. So please get involved with it.
Great idea. Yeah. Thank you. Okay. We shall move on. There was talk about a space hub in Anglesey. Is this still a possibility?
Who's asked that? If anyone asking that question, if you've got a bit more information on that, because the problem is sometimes the terms can be thrown around quite a lot. There is, in my role with ESA, I do cover the North Wales, so Anglesey is on my patch, and you've got the likes of MSpark there, which is the Menai Science Park, which does some great work. And there is nuclear there, of course. There's a nuclear site there that needs to find something to do. I'm not aware of any formal activities with Anglesey. However, I would point out that the Welsh government is doing a similar exercise to a space strategy. They had one about 5 years ago. They're updating that, so maybe something will come from that. I don't know.
Okay, thank you. One more question. Are you okay to continue?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Are there any resources that list the available technologies for business to access for product or service development?
That is a good question. The short answer is no. So within ESA Space Solutions, in Britain, we used to have a technology broker whose job was to broker that technology transfer, and they had access to patent lists from the European Space Agency. I know that STFC has patent lists that it uses, but in terms of a single unified resource, I don't think there is. And I think the reason there isn't is because a lot of it is privately held. A lot of it is commercially sensitive, as well as, nationally sensitive in some cases. That's regards physical technology. When it comes to data and space services, my role as ambassador along with the other ambassadors is to help people understand what data is available. How can you do that? How can you see 1 meter resolution in the visible spectrum, say? So we hold quite a lot of events like that. There's one coming up called Satellites 101, and I'll share that information with you guys later to be spread out there, which would be a webinar like this in which we help people understand what the capabilities are. But in terms of a single list, it doesn't exist because there's so much going on in so many different arenas that it'd be very hard to do that.
Okay. Thank you very much. Moving on. I've had a couple of questions on that awful word, Brexit. How will Brexit affect us? How will Brexit affect your plans in this area? How will Brexit affect our growth? Well, I can answer that, but I won't.
I mean, just put the news on. I mean, anyway, today. Okay. So, first of all, the European Space Agency is not affected by Brexit because it's not part of the EU. So that doesn't change anything. What I would say, and it does stick in my throat slightly, is that what Brexit has done is it's given us a kick. And it's given us a kick to go, we can't maybe, everything the economic structures we've relied on in the past, we can't rely on that because it's going to change. Of course it's going to change, whether you're for leaving the EU or against leaving the EU or neutral. Whatever side you sit on, the whole point of leaving the EU was to shake things up and to change things. And what the government has done is it's looked at the data and it's identified space as a really good investment. A really good investment. Like, I think with the program that I work on, ESA Business Applications. So we're a funding stream. We help businesses come to us and go, we want to do this, and we analyze that and we can co-fund them sometimes up to about 50% of the cost to get these services online. And the reason we do that is because it's about 14 times return on investment for UK PLC, for jobs growth, for tax, the tax takings and so on and so forth. So the government is now onto the fact that space is big business and it means business and it's growing. So much so that it's now classed as critical national infrastructure, which puts it in the same category as the national grid and as the motorway system. So what is happening, and it's actually the reason why I pivoted, the reason why when the opportunity came up to apply for this role, the reason I did it is because I thought we've got to do better. The Northwest can't go on doing 0.05% in space. It's got to do much better. And Brexit, because the government is reacting to the economic changes in Brexit, space is much higher up on that priority list. And people are much more, because they've got that economic kick has hit them, they're now thinking, well, what can I do? How can I innovate? What new markets are there? I can't just rely on this market anymore because it's in flux. So what can I do? So my response would be, no matter what your position on Brexit is, it would appear if we marshal our forces in the way that I think we should, Brexit and the fallout from Brexit can be an opportunity for the space sector. I went round the houses there, but I think I made my thoughts quite clear.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay, I've had a bit of a feedback from Anne Smith, who says that she thinks it might have been Lambeda. Is that how? I don't know if I pronounced that correctly, Anne. But that was to do with the Anglesey spaceport question.
Oh yeah. So Lambeda. So this is what I mentioned earlier. So Lambeda, Snowdonia Aerospace Centre. So so the plans there for the space hub, for the space centre there, are absolutely going ahead. They are. Lambeda is, as far as I know, is critical to the emerging Welsh space strategy. And as I say, that they're looking at using, rather than trying to directly compete with the likes of Newquay Cornwall or with the likes of Glasgow Prestwick, they found their own niche, which is R&D, which is what Lambeda was always used for, and in using that. So that will, yes, be about space propulsion and microgravity research, but also about, because Lambeda will also be focusing very much on drones and beyond line of sight drone flights, then there'll be that interaction will be very interesting. So there's a lot going on at Lambeda, and a lot more will happen as well.
Okay.
I did notice one question, and I've got to pick up on this because it stings my eye every time I see it.
Which one's that?
Why not send a copy of the LAS logo into space with a weather balloon?
Oh yeah.
And I'll tell you why. Because you can't go into space with a weather balloon. A weather balloon is buoyant in the atmosphere. You want to go beyond the atmosphere, you might use a balloon to get so high and then launch a rocket from it. But I get really frustrated, and I say this to people at conferences and all the time, and say, stop saying you're sending things into space with a balloon. Stop using fisheye lenses on the things that you send up, because we really are facing a challenge at the moment around anti-science and around a lack of belief in the scientific method itself. And a part of this is effing flat earth, right? And we laugh about it, but these people can vote, right? They can vote, and that means something. And they have kids, and their kids will be able to vote. And we need to just be honest. And saying that you've sent something into space because you sent it on a weather balloon is literally like saying you live in Liverpool and you've just been to Paris, when in fact you've been to Birmingham. That's the difference. Space is 333,000 feet up, 100 kilometers. The highest you can get with a weather balloon is 120,000 feet. Is about a third of the way there. So you've not been to space. You've not even been halfway to space. That's not to say that it's not an amazing technical achievement in what you can do with the weather balloons, in capturing the imagination of children. Wonderful thing. But stop saying you're going into space, because it isn't. Forgive me for jumping down your throat there, but it needs to be said.
Okay, fantastic. No problem. Okay. And we'll move on on that. Okay, so that was, I've lots of comments if you want to have a look at them, Alan, but that's the last question.
Okay.
I mean, absolutely fantastic. I don't know if you've looked at some of the comments and the feedback, but the feedback's been excellent. And yeah, fantastic feedback. I realise how soulless doing these sort of things over Zoom is. I mean, I had a Zoom meeting just before Christmas, and the person, I don't even know whether to tell you this, but it was like some sort of a party, but it was a party over Zoom, and they had a magician, and they had a dancer teaching you how to dance on Zoom. Needless to say, I didn't participate in the dancing, but I just thought, you're heroes trying to do magic tricks over Zoom, and teach people to dance over Zoom. So I realise how soulless this can be. So fantastic, and I've had some excellent feedback. I'm sure, like me, you've opened our eyes up to the sort of space industry that's just on our doorstep and the things that's going on. You did that really enthusiastically. And I love the phrase, an internationally ignored jazz singer. I don't think we've ever had an internationally ignored jazz singer talking to us before.
I'd learned in my time on stage, I learned a lot of shtick. My favourite's probably, you're right about soullessness on these things, but I'm always reminded of Sammy Davis Jr., who said, I'm a ham, I can't help it. The light hits me and I'm off. I open the fridge, do 20 minutes.
Very good. Very good. Okay. And I like the sound of the new golden age of Liverpool as well. That's some point in the future for our grandkids or great grandkids or whoever they'll be. So on behalf of the LAS and all the attendees, I'd like to thank you for the time you put into preparing and presenting to us this evening. Thank you very much, Alan. There should be a round of applause now, but if you want to click on your applause button, please do so. But thank you very much, Alan. Consider lots and lots of applause for your talk this evening. And I realise it's not the normal audience that you would give this kind of talk to. It's obviously more business related and goes out to the business community. But it's actually fascinating to see what is going on all around us. And we're all, we all live in the community, and we're all in businesses ourselves, or most of us are, unless you're retired like me. But nevertheless, it was really, really useful. So,
and hopefully, once in April, we're looking at launching the space strategy. So hopefully, after that, if you want to invite me back, I can give you a bit more detail and see what the next steps are going to be.
Well, we are looking to doing what we call short talks, which are little smaller versions of what we're doing tonight, sort of every couple of weeks. So just to try and keep things going. So that's a bit of a pre-announcement there. But we are looking to do something like that. So, maybe a short talk or maybe another monthly meeting talk would whichever one's appropriate. But brilliant. So thank you for that, Alan. Thank you very much. Okay, so before I do remind you of the date of the next meeting, I'd just like to tell you about these short talks that we're looking to try and do online. And whenever possible, we will have an intermediary talk, and that's going to be sort of a couple of weeks after the main monthly meeting talk. So this will be much more informal, and it won't. I'll put my video on, and it won't be as formal as this. It won't be minuted. It won't be a sort of all the stuff around a monthly meeting. So the next one we've got lined up is with Bob Nyer again, who, if you remember, gave us the talk in December about finding life in the universe. And he's done an article on the Proxima Centauri signal that was discovered at the Parkes telescope and was released out to the Guardian newspaper. So we all know about it now. So he's got a short talk on that. Can't give you a date yet because we haven't got that arranged, but we'll let you know. But it will be hopefully towards the end of the month. So the date of the next meeting is the 19th of February, and it'll be 7 o'clock start again. Same sort of format on Zoom, and I hope you can make it. The speaker and the talk is arranged, but not yet confirmed. So Mark will send out the meeting invites for the February meeting nearer the date. I'm going to close off now, but before I do, the people on YouTube, if you enjoyed yourself, please give us a like, and then I'll say goodbye to those of you on YouTube. And if you're on Zoom, then you can stay online, and we will swiftly move into the virtual pub, and we can all go in gallery mode. And for those of you that are left on, you can switch on your microphones, switch on your cameras, and you can join the virtual pub. To everybody else, I say thank you for attending, and have a great evening, and stay safe.